I was
actually
going to
write
literally say, can you
write it down.
repeat that last sentence you said right there? Because that's the one that people are going to want to write down is, what would you do with your goals, right? That was the gold, I think you said right there.
Yeah, what would you do with your time? Where would you be? Who would you be with if you had $1 trillion if money was no concern? And then write down that answer. And then to me, the second step is kind of, okay, how do I get closer to that today and in the long term? And do the decisions I'm making, do the things I invest in, do the businesses I'm, either growing or starting or whatever, are those consistent with my long-term goals? And if you have it written down, it's easy to go back, right? Because me and Alex have talked about this kind of like shiny object syndrome. I'm like, someone will call me up with some kind of deal and be like, oh man, this sounds like a good one. Like, sounds fun. I'm like, wait. Do I have to show up for this? Is it consistent? I'm like, wait, I'm retiring. I'm selling everything. Why the hell do I need more anything? Like, why do I need more, whatever deals, more apartments, more Airbnb leases? I'm like, man, this thing could make a lot of money. I'm like, wait, no. What is my goal? My goal is to not do anything. Okay, well, I'm not going to take that deal then. So I think once forming, what you want to do, then it's that part of making sure when you do things that it's consistent with that long-term goal.
What's up, my man Will? What's up, everybody that's joined in already? Live from Guadalajara, Mexico.
Guadalajara, man, that is awesome. I think it's pretty cool that you're able to get down there and see the family and get some business done at the same time. So pretty excited to kind of hear about that today. We're talking about financial independence and lifestyle design, and I know that's important for you and family is important for you. So we're excited to kind of dive into that a little bit here today.
Absolutely, I'm super excited about this webinar, you guys. We got Jay Martin in the house. He's going to cover a lot of stuff that he's learned traveling the world and designing life that I think most people are envious of. And I'm really, really excited about being in Mexico, spending some time with our virtual assistant, our main star down here. And then also the entire time getting to see family down here is just incredible, man. I'm really grateful. But yeah, let's rock and roll.
For sure. And again, I think you nailed it right on the head. Like, that's the main reason we do this kind of stuff, right? Is for your family, for your friends, and the fact that you're able to get down there and meet up with one of your friends who, just so happens to be a legendary investor at the same time, that's what it's about, right? So I think there's going to be people on the call that definitely want to do that and have dreams of being able to craft their life and their free time in a way that benefits them the most. So
yeah, absolutely. Because I think a lot of people want to travel more. I think a lot of people want, but they use these kind of reasons. And what I love about Jay Martin and his way of being is that he'll question you. And I met him after he had already been traveling for 5 years straight. And then now I've known him close to 2 years. And I'm just so happy to be able to share his journey and then answer some questions for the audience, because even though he's not a full-time investor like we are, as far as, active, he still is looking at deals and he's just all the way passive now. And you guys are going to love today's show. I'm just really excited. Let's go.
And you guys know the drill. We're going to go ahead and do the chat feature. So if you can use that chat feature down there below and go ahead and let us know where you're from. I know it's a lot of familiar faces. So you guys are starting to get to know each other. And last time Alex was here in Los Angeles, we got to do a hike with a couple of you guys. Probably trying to do another meetup here this month in June, at some point down the line, once we get a little bit more clarity on things, and, just excited to continue to connect with you guys. What we're talking about today is going to be financial freedom and lifestyle design. And again, obviously a pretty fun topic to talk about. So what we'll do, guys, is again, go ahead and use that chat feature down there below. And if you have any questions throughout the meeting, please do feel free to kind of use the Q&A feature there and, ask away. We'll have our guest on in just a little bit, Jay Martin. Alex, in the meantime, quick question for you, because obviously, everybody knows, you as being a flipper, right? You do a high volume of flips. Are you able to build passive income through flipping?
Well, no, because at the end of the day, you guys, let's be real. The job of flipping houses is a job. There is a consistent work there. If you don't flip houses, you're not going to make any money. Now, it's a job that I love because I have a lot of passion for the business and then for many different reasons. But everybody knows that if you stop flipping a house, you're not going to make any more money. So, but today we're going to talk about other things aside from flipping houses. But again, it's a job I love, and I'm very passionate about helping other people because it's also an extremely profitable job if you do it
And
right.
when we kind of talk about, flipping, Alex, obviously the first thing that comes to mind is, hey, you're flipping a house, right? You're getting an immediate return once you sell that property. Talk to us a little bit about the roles and goals with that. Like when you're thinking about a flip project versus a passive income project, how are those roles and goals a little bit different?
Well, yeah, if you're talking about flip project, then there's a lot more that needs to be done there. The acquisitions, the part of the project management, the resell the property, all those. When you're dealing with the passive income, it depends on which kind of vehicle you're using. If because, for example, with Jay Martin, he's investing in other people's apartment deals, where they're doing all of the work and he's just getting a return on his money, and he's literally just writing a check and then wiring the money and then getting a check back of interest and or his principal back. And so the roles are extremely different, and one very active, the other one very, very passive.
Huge. And guys, we always talk about the roles and goals and understanding the difference between those. So great questions that you guys are coming up with here. Next question we want to kind of dive into, Alex, is how can you use flipping to build passive income? I know you said that you can't, but how can you in other ways?
Well, I think on the very low level, you're going to be able to, if you flip a couple houses a year, make extra money that you're not currently making and invest that into, say, smaller apartment buildings, those type of acquisitions. That's maybe on the lower, more simple level. On the higher level, in which some of the stuff that the team and I are working on, right, is flipping at a high level and making a large amount of income and then investing that income into, say, apartment deals and things like that. So that way the active higher income is helping to build the long-term passive income. You're able to do it longer, or you're able to do it quicker and with more people if you build it out like what we're working on now.
And I think that's a big point, to kind of take into mind is you can build it out, right? It's something that you can build out, especially for you, it's you're building out a system, right? You're building out this process, and that's what it's kind of about. And kind of leads right into our next question, Alex, is, what do you want, or why do you want financial freedom? And really, like, what does that look like for you?
I love that question because I think we all have to answer that for ourselves. Number one is say, like, hey, like, why is it that I want to become financially free? It's cliche, or it's talked about often, because if you don't have that burning reason, that desire to do something, then you're going to quit when it gets hard, right? And so for me, what it's always really meant is just to have the choices that I want, to be able to take care of my family. I think everybody has some type of a wish or desire to help improve the lives of the people that they love, and that might be family, that might be great, close friends of yours, that could be people that you work with. So for me, if I think it'd be easy for me just to like flip a couple houses a year and then just make a good living and then just do, just keep it simple there. But I want to do it bigger so then I can affect more people, and more people can be, win with me. It's kind of like my mindset. I also like to focus more now as I'm getting a little bit older on my health. I feel like that's something, if I'm able to really invest a lot of time, money, and energy into that part, it just plays huge returns. And I can continue to be very active in my life and travel and be able to trail run and hike a lot more often in many different beautiful locations. So that to me is extremely important, and if I have financial freedom, that'll allow me to do that. And then the location freedom. And I don't really talk about traveling, meaning I don't have to be at this specific time. I'm not restricted by the location I'm at. Sure, there's times I have to be in Los Angeles. Sure, there's times that I have to be in Maui. But at the same time, I'm designing it so then that way other people can replace me, but other people are winning just as much as me, or we're all winning together, and then we're all aligned together. So there's no misalignment where, okay, this person is jealous of me being in a different country on my team because they have just as much opportunities. They know they have to pay their dues. They know that, they're going to get to, with my help, they can get to my level. And by the time they're at my level, then I'm at a different level. And that's really the way I look at the financial freedom, kind of just the climb up that mountain. We're all on a different part of the mountain. Some people are farther along than others, but the reality is that we all have that common goal. That's why we're on this call, is because, we want to have more freedom in our lives. And we know that real estate can provide that for all of us if we really, work hard at it and get around the right people, do enough deals. I mean, that could, you're going to see that today with Jay Martin, how he's been able to basically retire in his mid-30s and live the life of his dreams. And just drop the mic. Let's go.
And guys, again, I think that's great points there, Alex, talking about your personal why, why you want to achieve financial freedom. And if you guys don't mind, go ahead and use that chat feature. Appreciate Nick Mobley sharing what he thinks on financial freedom. I see Ben, health is number one. Our guest speaker today, Jay Martin, the new location is financial freedom. And even, one of our guests, Carlos, saying creating generational wealth. So I'd love to hear from you guys in the chat. What is your financial freedom? If you guys don't mind sharing that in there. I'm also going to share the Facebook group. As you guys know, we have a Facebook group where everybody in here can connect. If you're new, feel free to connect with us in that Facebook group. We'd love to hear from you and love to get to know you a little bit more. Again, that's kind of where we continue to grow our vibe of our tribe. And speaking of the vibe of the tribe, Alex is going to go ahead and welcome on today our special guest, guy we're pretty stoked to bring on here. Jay Martin is somebody who's been actively pursuing financial freedom, and we'll let Alex tell you guys a little bit more about him and why we're kind of bringing him on today.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm pleased to bring you guys Jay Martin today. He's one of my most interesting friends and fellow investors. I met him at the Maui Mastermind about 2 years ago now. In July, it's going to be 2 years that we met. Back in October, actually 2 times over the summer to like winter of last year, we hung out. One time was in Seattle for the virtual badass conference up there, thrown by Tarl Yarber and all those rock stars up there. And then we got to hang out kind of backstage together. And then we got to hang out again in Mexico because I was going down to see my virtual assistant at the time. And he suggested like, hey, why don't we just meet up and all kind of hang out? And we ended up hanging out for like 10 days plus. But he's helped me really, really just look at the world a different way. The location freedom, just question how much money you really need as far as passive income to live the life that you really want. Because so many times, and I know he's going to cover that in more detail today, but we think about the amount of money we need before we think about the life we want to build. And that's kind of in reverse. So that's what he's going to help you guys get clear today, which is you need to think about the first one or need to think about the life first. And then you can reverse engineer, as they say, and then decide how much money you really need for that. It might be a lot less than what you think. So anyways, here's Jay Martin. That's my man. We're here in Guadalajara. What's up, Jay? How are you doing today?
Hey, what's up, Alex and Will? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, this is awesome. And I think Jay is a great guest to have on here, Alex, because like you said, he's somebody who's actively kind of pursuing, financial freedom and more than anything, lifestyle design. So before you got to that point, right? Before you got your financial freedom, before you got to be able to, design this killer lifestyle that you've designed, tell us a little bit more about you, man. Like, where'd you come from? What were your ups and downs, and like, what did this real estate journey kind of look like for you?
Yeah, well, I love when, Alex was talking earlier about the why, right? And it's such an important part of investing. For me, honestly, I got arrested and thrown in jail for selling coke. I ended up getting in a fight in the yard while we were playing handball, which was pretty good for one of the white guys there. And I got thrown in solitary confinement. And I was basically in this tiny little cell locked up with myself all day long. And I would say, not everyone needs to find a rock bottom to have motivation to invest. But for me, that was a real kick in the ass to get motivated. And I decided then I saw so many people in jail that had come back in. They're like, oh, hey, it's been a while since we've seen you. People coming in and out and stuff. And I was like, I'm not going back. I'm going to find some legit way to make money. So, I mean, talk about like freedom. I mean, this is the exact opposite, right? Being locked up all day long without anyone to talk to, without anything to do, except sleep, push-ups, and a little bit of reading. So for the why, that was what mine was, is I knew I didn't want that life being locked up. And I was really motivated to get more freedom. Again, this is a low bar to start from, right? When you're locked up all day, I wanted a little more freedom than that. And I don't encourage everyone to go, commit crimes and get locked up to get some motivation. But for a lot of people, it could be their family. It could, like Alex was saying, helping out their family, maybe helping out charities they want, being able to just build the life that they want. Like we're talking about lifestyle design, is where would you really like to live? If you had all the money in the world, and something like that. So I think finding that why, that reason that motivates you to go do something is an important first step. Like you say too, right? When you hit those challenges, when you hit those bumps in the road, if you don't have a motivation behind it, it's harder to keep going. So I think that's just a really important point. And again, this is not advice to get locked up for selling coke, so please don't go do it.
No, and I think that's a huge point there, Jay, is like you said, you don't need to find rock bottom to find your motivation or to find your why, but just to share a couple of people's whys that they're kind of sharing here in the chat. Kevin wants to retire his wife and his parents and provide support for his children. Blake wants to have freedom, and that's something that he says, hey, you have that right now, Jay Martin. So he's complimentary of you in that. And Omar wants to be able to take care of his friends and his family, and Melissa wants to be able to travel and spend time with her family and show her kids the world. You see this common theme, right? Doug wants to have freedom to travel, time with his family. Irish is in the same place to be able to impact her community. So you're really seeing this kind of resounding similarity between just about everybody who's in this tribe right now, which is, they want to have the freedom of time, family, and the ability to do things. Would you agree that that's pretty much right in line with what you're looking at, Alex and Jay?
Yep. I mean,
absolutely. And I mean, the things I kept hearing there, right, was always someone's always mentioning their family, whether it be helping them, supporting them financially, spending more time with them. Someone said they didn't want to miss the soccer games, for their child. So I think that's, the time component. That's with family. I heard travel in there a few times. And these are all things that I've been able to do, like whenever my family has an event, I fly back from whatever country I'm in, go there. I want to spend time with friends too. Alex hit me up and he's like, hey, I would be down in Guadalajara. I'm like, all right, I'm helping my sister with something on Wednesday and I'll be down on Thursday. So it's been really great to be able to start to realize that and realize it sooner maybe than I thought. Because I started 6-7 years ago, but now I'm going fully passive. And I think that once people find that why and get started, I think it's important to keep remembering that why, to make decisions based on getting closer to that goal and trying to realize at least portions of that goal sooner than later, hopefully. So I think that's part of the progression, is just getting from that why. Again, in my particular circumstance, was this kind of rock bottom, and I progressed. I ended up going back to school, getting a job, doing my first deal was an FHA deal on a fourplex, which I encourage everyone to do FHA if they can. And then progressing to do some wholesale deals, partnering up. And now I'm going on to sell all these properties. Actually just closing the first property 2 days ago, got a wire for about $250,000. So that was a nice, realization of years of work. So I'll be putting that into passive investments also, and got a few more properties to sell. So that's kind of like, going from that why, that motivation for me again, having been in jail and been in solitary confinement, to going back to school, getting a job, learning and networking, and learning more to go buy these properties. And then now transitioning to this other part of my life, which is the more passive investing side. So I quit my job about 6 or 7 years ago, and I've just haven't had a home, like a permanent home. I just rented out everything out on Airbnb, and I've been traveling full time, maybe 35, 40 countries, something like that in the last years. And I probably spend a bit over half my time outside the country, just exploring around. And I'm actually in Guadalajara right now with Alex. I'm just in another room so we don't get echo. So we've been hanging out down here and chatting about real estate and, enjoying the city.
So one thing that I kind of took from your story that was, incredible is what you said about freedom, right? So you went from, and we had a couple of people in the chat that just said, again, mic drop on the intro to the story, just a great way to start. But I loved how you talked about freedom, right? you were in solitary confinement, stuck in a small little box. So you didn't even have financial freedom on your radar at this point. You were just looking
No
for
geographic freedom, no time freedom. No, well,
none of
in
it.
theory, I had all the time in the world. I had 23 and a half hours per day to do whatever the hell I wanted to do.
So that's crazy to think. Like, again, you're on the furthest end of freedom
Yeah.
spectrum. You
Yeah.
have no freedoms. The only freedom you have is the time to think. And again, I just wanted to kind of bring that to light because, you know, again, for some people in this room, people have circumstances, they have excuses, they have problems, they have roadblocks. But really, like looking at your story, you were the furthest down spectrum of not having an excuse, not having any type of freedom, and you were able to kind of get there. So that's something that you should
Well,
truly be proud of, right?
yeah, and what I want to
Thank you.
unpack a little bit there, J. Martin, was when you got out of jail, right? And then after you got out of jail, you got the job, you got that first fourplex, and then you started doing other type of deals. How many years were you working actively, investing and doing deals before you decided to actually do the full-time traveling? I guess where I'm curious.
Well, I think I had bought maybe one or two properties before I quit my job, and I had started an Airbnb kind of arbitrage business. So I would rent a property from someone, another investor that I know, for example, put furniture inside, and then rent it out on Airbnb. And I have a team in the Philippines who does all that work that I kind of wrote standard operating procedures for. So I think, from the time I first decided I was going to invest, it probably took me a couple of years actually to get my first property. And then bought one every 6 months for the next couple of years. I stopped too early. I only bought four. Maybe this is part of the lesson too, is I thought the market was already pretty high back in 2015. I mean, it just gone down so low and recovered so quickly, basically. After 2010, basically 2011, started really coming back. So anyway, it took me a long time. I think I was sitting on the sidelines for a little bit too long, a little bit too much analysis kind of thing, analysis paralysis, and just I hadn't networked enough to meet people and have enough confidence and contacts and ability to reach out to people and execute if I needed to. So I think that was the biggest mistake that I made. And what took me a little bit longer to get going, so to speak, was I didn't network earlier enough. Even after I'd found biggerpockets.com and some stuff, I hadn't really done a lot of networking or in-person networking. And that really changed everything for me. So I think that would have made it quicker if I would have started networking and listening to webinars like this and, getting involved in Facebook groups like you have and stuff like that earlier, where people can exchange those ideas and help each other.
Yeah, for sure.
And guys, speaking of that, I dropped the Facebook group earlier, but I just wanted to give a big shout out to Zaylin. I know Eliam, Sean, Hector, Doug, Meg, a couple people, Renee and Lindsay have already gone on there, and Derek has shared some of their wins in the Facebook group. But I challenge all of you guys this week to share one of your small wins. It doesn't have to be the big win. Again, it wasn't like Jay Martin came out of prison and all of a sudden became a passive investor, but share that small win along the way, because there's somebody else that's struggling through the same things that you are. And when they see that small win, it'll provide inspiration and motivation for them to get along there with you. And Jay, that's the next thing I wanted to kind of dive in about your story specifically is, you get out of jail, right? And I know Alex said, what was the timeline to becoming financially free and looking to travel? But what was the timeline to getting that first deal? Like, you're a felon right out of jail. That obviously can't be easy. Did you just, a light bulb went off and you were like, hey, I can do this? Or did you kind of go through some struggles trying to get to that point?
I mean, there were years in between. When I first got out of jail, it was real tough. I was actually going to stay with a relative, and it turns out, I couldn't stay there because the property manager said, hey, no felons, on the premises. Finding a job and finding housing is super tough, when you have a criminal record. And even actually Oakland, where I've invested, they banned criminal background checks. So you can't do criminal background checks on anyone anymore, specifically for that reason. So I think people have mixed opinions about that specific law. Personally, I do, as both a landlord and a felon, have mixed opinions about it. But so it was a super challenge. I had a lot of help. I was fortunate that family, friends, my sort of girlfriend, I ended up staying with her for a while too. I did get a lot of support that helped me through that period. My first job was at a gas station. First job out of jail. So I would wash windows at a gas station. So that was kind of like my start. I ended up going back to school. I actually was working at a nonprofit. I ended up going to a recruiting thing after I graduated to help recruit for the nonprofit. Ran into one of my former teachers, and he said, "Hey, I remember you from class. You did a good job. You know, why don't you come apply for this job I got at it's the state of California in bank regulation." And I was like, okay, maybe. I ended up going taking the test later. You know, got an interview and all this stuff. And right as I'm, you know, about to sign the documents, they're like, "Oh, you know, you just got to fill out this form and any, you know, criminal background." I'm like, yeah, actually, I do have a criminal background. Fortunately, with the state, I got a little bit lucky here in that they look at the crime relative to what the job is. So, for example, you know, this was a drug-related charge. So if it was like a pharmaceutical position, I would be automatically disqualified. Or if I'd committed fraud and this is a financial-related thing, I would be disqualified. Unfortunately, I was still, you know, qualified for the position. Went into bank regulation, so we would review real estate loans at banks for safety and soundness, which means this was during the financial crisis. And basically every over leveraged loan, you know, with borrowers that didn't have the resources to pay it back, they got to set aside money for this. So we would go in there and see this. I mean, we would go down in on Fridays sometimes and shut down banks. Like say, "Hey, we have an announcement to make. All of you stay here. Don't touch anything. We sold your bank to another bank. You're done." That's how crazy it was, right? But I had the opportunity to look at these financial statements and Schedule E's and cash flow statements for these properties. I mean, people went bankrupt and lost everything. And then people started to come in and pick up the pieces. And that's where a lot of my coworkers, I think, were just so focused on the risk. And they're like, "Oh, I could never buy real estate. People are going bankrupt." But I think, right, it's Warren Buffett that said, "Be greedy when others are fearful and fearful when others are greedy." And when everyone was flipping out and didn't want to touch anything, I was like, and plus in the Bay Area, they was making tons of cash flow on good properties, which never happens. And I was like, man, this is a unique opportunity. So I think this is maybe just a lesson to wherever you're at, whatever business you're in, whatever it may be, is just keeping your eyes open for opportunity. And maybe if some people are too scared of it or whatever it may be, maybe there's something else there to look at. So I think just keeping your eyes open. But that was that progression that got me into real estate. And I got to give a shout out to my buddy, Roberto Chavez, who was another bank regulator who made me look really from an investment perspective. And another guy, Johnson Hong, who introduced me to biggerpockets.com. So it was this combination of getting a peek into real estate, you know, from my job and getting on biggerpockets.com and then starting to network in person that combined to give me the knowledge and resources to be able to go out and actually buy something. So if you're talking about that entire period, I mean, it was years, probably 6, 7, 8 years after I got out of jail before I closed my first deal. From when I first got exposed to real estate, it was probably about 2.5 or 3. I will say it was really tough to get in with an FHA loan, which is what I did the first time. If you guys remember back, this was in actually in 2010, I believe I was making my first offers. I didn't close until December 31st, 2012, New Year's Eve, 2012. It was so hard to get into competing with cash buyers like Alex when I was coming in with an FHA loan. So it's really difficult to get a place, exactly where I wanted. So I moved a little bit further out. And that one I'll be selling next year. Most of these have doubled or more, the asset price. And for all of them, I put $12,000 down. And most of that was cash out refi money. So whether I'm doing a partnership or whatever, buying 100%, buying 50%, I always put $12,000 down and borrow the rest. So you can imagine when you get a, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 bump in the asset price on 12,000, it's a pretty good ROI.
So this is incredible stuff, man. And Irish actually had a great question in the chat, in the Q&A feature down there. So she's wondering, what are some of the challenges you faced when you first started investing? Again, we talked about being a felon, but did you run into any other issues? Obviously, like you said, an FHA loan, being a felon, those are some of the tough things, the strikes against you. Was there anything else that kind of held you back when you first got started?
Well, I would say, fortunately, the felony thing does not disqualify you from an FHA loan, nor is it a question on any loan application that I'm aware of. So for anyone who does have a criminal background, maybe, part of the bigger point, and I think you kind of made earlier, Will, is like, you may not have a criminal background, you may have something else. I also had a lot of advantages and help from my family, which, other people may not have in their life. I think the big point there, the two, though, is like, someone has always had a bigger challenge than you and overcome something bigger. And that's true for me too. There's people who have had way, way bigger struggles and done way more than I So I'm not trying to make light of anyone else's situation or make mine seem bigger than others, because I had a lot of help along the way too. But I just wanted to kind of make that point of, people have different struggles. They might have a mental health struggle. They might have family members that they need to take care of constantly and might have less time, but trying to find ways to overcome that, first of all.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point, guys. That it always could be worse. I like to use that quite a lot now because it's easy for you to think of someone else if you actually put your mind to it and say, hey, my situation is really not that bad. I think my biggest struggle when I was getting started is just that I think somebody in my family was making money, and I'm like, oh, there's easy ways to make money sometimes, and you get lured by that rather than working on something maybe it's like more long term, or that something that has such an upside potential, like working in real estate investing for the long term. So yeah.
Just to add, to your question there, so other challenges, I wanted to throw out one thing that, when I first started working, I worked for the state of California. We had furloughs. The pay wasn't that great. I was only looking, I think, at about a 250, maybe 275 purchase price based on my debt to income ratio. So I want to throw this out for newer investors. If you're buying a fourplex, FHA, I still believe it's still the same. They count 75% of the income from the other units that you're not residing in. So if you buy a fourplex, you get 75% of the rents of whatever's there, or market rents if they're vacant, as determined by the appraisal. So that bumped my purchase price. I was looking for a condo. That bumped my purchase price way up, and I could buy a more serious investment property. So for anyone who maybe doesn't have the highest income out there, and say, oh, I can't qualify for this, or I can't buy an investment property, go talk to a loan officer and say, hey, here's my current income. What if I bought this type of property with this type of rents? And hopefully make your own kind of spreadsheet so you can analyze what you qualify for, because it may present another opportunity to you to buy something more of an investment property. So that was one challenge I faced with the lower income, and something that I just found out by networking with people. And hopefully that, that helps someone out there who's looking at, oh man, I'd love to get an investment property, but I don't qualify. It's like, well, maybe you do actually. So just go talk to a loan officer.
Definitely recommend talking to a loan officer. You never know until you get approved. Just curious, how many FHA loans have you gotten, Jay Martin? Jonathan's wondering.
I saw that pop up. I've actually only done one. I do not believe there's an explicit limit unless it's 10. There's some things you need to go through, but you can't have multiple FHA loans. I probably should have done more. I ended up buying with partners. To be honest, I'm kind of blanking on the reason why I didn't do more of them.
Well, no, I think there is a limit. If the property is not, it has to be a certain distance away from, because if you buy it as a primary.
Kind of, but not exactly. It's talk to your loan officer is my only.
Yeah, underwriter discretion. There's underwriter discretion, which is
and then there needs to be justification behind it and this and that. All I'm saying is I don't believe there's a hard limit. So I think there are opportunities out there. Definitely talk to a loan officer who's knowledgeable about, maybe works with investors, also works with homeowners who do FHA loans. They usually have a good sense of what's going on, what's allowed, and a lot of that burden is on them. As long as you're planning to occupy the property for a year, which I believe is the requirement, is that you intend to live there for a year. I really encourage people, especially getting started, but even as you keep going, FHA is such a great product. If instead of putting a bigger down payment, I'd rather be doing a small down payment, let the government cover the loan, and invest that extra money in some other passive source of income. Because even 3-4%, whatever rates they're getting today, 2.5%, is nuts to not be investing that money somewhere else instead of prepaying a mortgage or paying a bigger down payment, in my opinion, if you're trying to do passive investing and get more passive.
Huge.
House hacking, yes.
No, that's a house hack 101, right? And
that was gold.
Yeah, that was some gold right there. So that was awesome, and appreciate you kind of sharing there. Well, Alex has mentioned it a couple of times, right? Your, lifestyle design. Tell us more about that, Jay Martin. Like, what is lifestyle design? What does that mean? What is Alex kind of talking about? And if you guys don't mind, we're going to ask you a question here in just a little bit, and Alex is going to answer that, and Jay Martin is going to answer that. But if you guys don't mind, in the chat, just go ahead and let us know, what would you do with your time if you had $1 trillion? And just go ahead and guys, start putting that in the chat. That way we can start seeing your answers as they come in. And then let us know a little bit more, Jay Martin, like, what is lifestyle design? What are we talking about?
Yeah, I think lifestyle, it's designing your life the way you want it, essentially, in my opinion. I think a big part of it is imagining and really thinking, not imagine maybe, but thinking thoughtfully about how you would like your life to be. Again, and I always ask people, it's like if you had $1 trillion, if money was no concern, what would you do with your time? Where would you be? And I think that people really limit themselves by not really imagining, thinking outside the box. Where would you like to live ideally? With who? With your family there? Would you buy your own family, whatever it may be? What would you like? Who would you like to spend your time with? Where would you like to be? What would you like to be doing? Hobbies maybe that you've always wanted to do. And then setting up your life in a way that gets you closer to that and hopefully completely into that for the long term. So I think to me, the lifestyle design aspect is first, well, you got to figure out what it is you really want. And then the design aspect comes in of forming your life in a way that is consistent with those goals. And I encourage people to write that down, actually. It's like, what would you do with your time if you had $1 trillion? Where would you be? What would you be doing?
Again, I think that's huge there. It's about design your lifestyle around your goals and just kind of work backwards, right? And so I'll pose the question to both of you then. So, Alex, for you, what would you do with your time if you had $1 trillion? And Jay Martin, what would you do with your time if you had $1 trillion?
Well, I thought about it because Jay Martin has asked me the question several times, and he's so serious when he does, even though he's so.
Well, it can change over time too, right? But you got to at least start somewhere, right?
Yeah, and for me, it's been having the ability to travel, also with the family, and to just do super cool things and adventures that I just won't get to do, or a lot of people don't get to do. I'm very adventurous that way, and so. I'd say that's kind of really, really important to me. I think I'd read a lot more books because I'd have more time. I could continue to work on my personal development, even though if I'm retired, I have a bunch of money, I still want to learn and become a better person, a better human being. I think I'd also not live in one permanent place, kind of like I'm now. Like I don't know if I'd be the extreme of Jay Martin and just kind of going where the wind blows. But
donde mi chancla punto.
But it would definitely be where like right now with living in Hawaii, but being able to go to the West Coast and Southern California, and then also being able to sprinkle in Mexico and ideally some South America, and then to do something more East Coast stuff, and then being able to go to Europe. I think it's something, there's just so many places on this planet that I'd like to visit. And so I think with all that money, I definitely would just want to be able to travel more and then spend a lot more time with my family in these cool locations. And then being able to, I'm kind of already doing a lot of that now. And that's what Jay Martin's thing is. It's just like, hey, how much more money do you really need? You got to constantly ask yourself that question, because everybody's at a different level. But once you start working in this business, a couple years into it, 2, 3, 4 years, you should have some level of financial success. Maybe you can't be taking these long vacations at the very beginning on your first deal. But you need to be consciously thinking about it, because then it's going to run away from you. And then all of a sudden you got all these obligations, all this team, all these overhead, and you're like getting further away from really the life that you want, like he says so much. And so, yeah, I think that's what it is for me. Just having that, the ability to say, hey, I want to do this. I want to do that. Okay. I think I want to do that. And having the choice, that's what having $1 trillion would do for me.
And
I like that you're.
To you, what would you do if you had the $1 trillion? What would you do with your time?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I love, that Alex was saying, and I'm getting started on it now. Like I'm traveling more, again, we're sitting in Guadalajara right now. Because I think it's important that maybe people can at least start getting a taste of that or a portion of that maybe sooner than they think, if they can, prioritize their time and, make a lot of money with the little time they use on work, hopefully, or something like that.
Yeah. Let me echo one more thing about that, right, Jay and Will, and everybody that's watching. If it would have just only been financial or just about whether I was ready or not, I wouldn't have moved to Hawaii. That was a lifestyle design type of kind of move, and say, hey, you know what? I can enjoy the way up. And then I, after 5-6 months of being there, then I made it profitable. But it wasn't like it was intention. It was like, hey, this is a lifestyle move above. It's not a financial move. And sometimes that's what happens. Like I said earlier, is that you're into this business 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and then you have choices. If you're thinking about that, options, you're like, hey, I didn't think of this at the beginning, but this really is something that I would make me very, very happy, and I can do this. So why not now? Why not now?
Yeah. Why not now? I love that question. Why not now?
And interestingly enough, that's the next question on here, and this is why Jay Martin is such an incredible mentor is the next question he always asks right after that is, well, why not now? Why aren't you doing more of that right now? And that's the next question that I'll pose to you gentlemen is Alex, why aren't you doing more of that right now? And Jay Martin, why aren't you doing more of that right now? And you already are kind of. So Alex, over to you. Why aren't you doing more of that right now, man?
Frankly, I'm pretty happy with the amount of travel that I'm getting to do and the places I'm getting to see. And I don't really have any complaints there. So I think because I asked myself that question 6 months, 8 months, a year ago is why today I can say now that, hey, I'm doing kind of what Jay Martin had suggested, but also deep down when I thought about it, what I wanted was a little bit more of changes location-wise and options, and then being able to decide on how much time I want to spend at these places and really just experience all these different locations. And I mean, like I said, doing it right now. Like we're deciding whether we can maybe go to a Cancun this weekend or Puerto Rico, right, Jay? Or I'm probably gonna be back in LA sometime next week. So we might do something else this weekend and leave Guadalajara. Why not now?
Yeah.
And it started that way, like Jay Martin said, you don't have to know the answer right now, but you have to have a start, right? So Alex started by texting me and saying, hey, I'm gonna go down to Mexico for a couple of days. Then Alex changed the plan to, hey, Jay Martin's coming down here. I'm going to be here for a couple more days. Then he was like, hey, I'll probably be back in LA in a day or two. And then it was, we might actually be going to another country and or a different city. And so, again, that's part of the freedom. That's part of the lifestyle by design that these guys are both chasing and that these guys are both building and developing is, hey, what if I have the ability to, Alex was, what would he do with $1 trillion? Is he would have more freedom to travel and make those decisions he wants to make. Well, Jay Martin posed the question, well, why aren't you traveling and why aren't you making that decision right now? And, that's where Alex is able to say, hey, well, we have a system in LA. We have a business that operates in LA. I have a business that operates in Hawaii, and I can probably go to Puerto Rico with you right now if that's what I really want to do. And that's a decision I want to make. So I think that's huge. And, Jay and Alex, I know you guys are dialed in right now, but in the chat, people are just, truly inspired by everything you guys are saying here and truly appreciative. So the next question I want to ask you guys is, and Jay Martin, you can kind of kick it off. How did you go about designing your lifestyle as this world traveler, right? You said 35 countries in a couple of years. Those are numbers that some people might not hit in a lifetime. And this is a guy who was a felon a couple years back and is now able to chase the dreams that some people aren't able to catch in their lifetime. So tell us again real quick, how did you go about designing your lifestyle as this world traveler, right?
Yeah. To be honest, I took this trip, my first really long traveling trip, went back to the state of California to Europe. And when I was going to go for 2 weeks, standard American vacation, 2 weeks. My buddy's like, how much, you can take unpaid time off and, just if you're going, go for 6 weeks or whatever. And I was like, oh, I could do that. And he's like, yeah, why not? So I went for 6 weeks. I loved it. And so that's when I decided, man, I really wanted to travel. I just, had this passion for it. So, my immediate thing was not having to be physically present to make money. And I think realistically for people that, are focused on being like an owner of a business and not just working in their business. I mean, you can own a hair salon, right? I mean, clipping hair is probably the least remote job available, but you can still own a hair salon if you want, right? Not have to show up and collect money. So I think people put up all kinds of excuses of why they have to physically be there, why they have to show up, why they have to be the one to meet the person, why they have to be the one to inspect the property. And frankly, it's all bullshit. I mean, people think, I made people repeat after me in this one conference I was at, like, I am not a unique snowflake. Like if you can train someone to do what you do, that's more important than being able to do it yourself. So for me, that was my biggest focus in creating my lifestyle design, is that I wanted to be able to go wherever I wanted to go, whenever that was. I'll be honest, my first goal was just to be able to travel and work remotely, right? Because that was the only thing I could imagine at the time. So I started this Airbnb business. I had bought a couple properties. I quit my job. I was managing it all myself. And actually, I went with my sister to go hiking and down the Grand Canyon and have a supai. There's this beautiful waterfall at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. You can camp down there. Killer spot. I literally realized on the way out there, as the internet was dying out, I'm like, oh man, I'm going to be out there for 3 or 4 days, and I don't have anyone to respond to my Airbnb messages. So I had to like shut down on my listings, call up my handyman, try to get him in the static, and be like, hey, here's all the info for everyone. You know, I told them to call you if they need a problem. I'm literally just doing this last second because I didn't think about it. And that was the moment where I was like, you know what? I don't want to just be able to work remotely. I want to be able to not work remotely. So that's, it's not remote work.
Mic drop, bro. That is huge.
But I was like, man, you know, like what? So I can't go with my sister, you know, for 4 days on this crazy camping trip. And that was the moment where I was like, okay, I need to find out more. So I was talking to my buddy about it, again, networking. One of the guys I actually rent apartments from. And he's like, hey, you know, read this book, The E-Myth. And I think the new one's The E-Myth Revisited, or whatever, E-MYTH. And it's about processes and procedures. And I read that actually on the way to Thailand. It's like a 17-hour flight, I think, from San Francisco. And I was blown away. It was just like, oh, wait, you don't actually have to run your business. You can have other people do it. And it talked about processes and procedures. I really highly encourage people to check out this book. And literally after I landed, I started writing process and procedures. I went on, I think it was Upwork back then, although I use a different website now, to start hiring VAs. And I just like, let's go, right? I just got it started. I was just fired up to, like, every time my mind's been expanded. Like when I was in solitary confinement, I couldn't even imagine getting a job and a place to stay, you know? And then when I got that, I'm like, oh, great, I got a job at a gas station. And then, you know, it's like, oh shit, I could go back to school. And then it was like, oh, wow, I can make some money. And then it was like, oh, I could quit my job and work remotely. And then I'm like, wait, maybe I don't have to work at all. And now I'm, you know, just selling everything and I'm not going to do anything except wire money around. The name of the book is E-Myth, E-Myth. So anyway, I think it's, you know, we always talk as investors about mindset. And I think it takes a long time sometimes, because I heard people talking about mindset way back when. And every time I thought my mindset was now open and totally, you know, open for anything, there's a new level. I talked to someone else and there's a new level of possibilities. I think I finally got to the point where I'm comfortable enough to just stop and kind of, you know, retire now, so to speak. But again, that number is different for everyone, but hopefully they'll be focused on what you want your life to be like, along with a level of security to that. But also not overshooting. I think some people have this idea like, oh, I want $10,000, or I want, you know, whatever, a certain net worth or a certain like number, that it's hard to exactly tie back to what it is they want to do with their time if they had money, right? So I always encourage people, and that's why we're kind of talking about doing this as lifestyle design first. What it is you want to do, how much money do you need to do that? And how much effort do you have to put in to make that money to get to your lifestyle goal? And how long does that take, right? And so that's the kind of flow through that I think I would encourage people to think about. Because I think some people maybe, like we were talking a little bit, maybe we'll get into this later, about like, okay, so how do you think about a net worth versus monthly income? You know, and what, you know, what you need to make on your money. I was actually kind of surprised at what I can make investing in other people's deals, including, you know, like stuff like you have, you know, opportunities for lending to your company. Other people I've met at the mastermind, you know, like Brandon, Open Door Capital, you know, I invest with them and stuff like that. It's just been an eye-opening experience to kind of go through that process and see how much it really does take to live the life that you want.
Yeah.
It's different for everyone, right?
And you know what's been interesting, guys, that I just made me think of something. We were at this other Airbnb, and then we were talking about, you know, the amount of work it takes to flip a house. It's the same if you're making 30,000 or 300,000, but there's people making 300,000 per flip. So, you know,
there's people making millions per flip if we want to get serious here, but yes.
Exactly. And so that's what he helped me think. He's like, hey, I know this high-end flipper, like it's the same amount of work. This is the price points. And then we got into like the nitty-gritty of like, hey, I can flip higher end homes. That's a potential. And if you're still going to do the same work, you can make a lot more. I mean, that's really what's drawn me to Hawaii, frankly, the ability to have those higher spreads. But then now I'm seeing them in Southern California with those like custom builds in specific neighborhoods that we talked about. And then I'm figuring out the financing for that through talking to those people, networking, right? And then also the long-term financing for other type of plays like the multifamily. So it just like he was just saying right now, it's just you gotta always have an open mind, and you know.
And look for those opportunities.
Blake made a comment here. He was actually afraid to say this, and I'm glad that you did say it, Jay Martin. That you wanted to not have to work when you were remote, and
Yeah.
that's something that every time Alex comes back from a trip to Mexico with you, we talk about is Alex will say, how do I do more with less of my time? And it derives from that question that you always ask him, which is, hey, Alex, do you really need to do that? Is it do you really need to do that? Like your business needs to do that, but do you really need to do that?
And it's
So I wanted to ask you guys both that question again is how do you do more with less of your time?
That's a great question. I'll let Jay answer it in a moment, but I wanted to make a point of what he told me last time, where we were in Mexico in October, we're hanging out, and then we're still freestyling, like we didn't have an exit date, and then I had to move to Hawaii like in about. It was like 2 weeks, and then it was like 10 days, and then 7 days. I was like, hey, dude, I kind of got to get going. And he's like, why don't you just fly right from Mexico to Maui? And I'm like, well, I got to go home and pack. I got to, meet with the team. Be like, wait a minute, though. I mean, somebody could probably pack your stuff. You're probably not going to take more than a couple carry-ons, right? I'm like, yeah, that's true. And he's like, well, what do you need to go back to the team for? Like, I mean, you're going to be doing everything virtual anyway. So why is this last week special? I'm like,
you gotta give Will a kiss in person? You can't blow him one or what?
And so he got me to question whether I even had to even go back to LA before I went back to move to Hawaii. And although I did give him, the rebuttal was like, no, I have to do some like training and then some final stuff, with the family and whatnot. And he was like, okay, that's different though. But make sure you're not thinking about like you have to because of that specific thing, because you could go ahead and have people do that for you too. I'm like, you're right, Jay. All right, bro.
Well, I'm just lazier, so it comes more naturally to me. But yeah.
So, Jay, what about you? How did how did you do more with less of your time? Obviously, like you said, you're sitting there and you're on the computer and you're like, crap, man, I'm going to Havasupai Falls and I don't have my Airbnb set up. What did that look like for you? Like, how were you able to do more with less of your time?
I think, well, first of all, from a macro perspective, I think it's, working like smart, not hard. And really, when I say smart, to me, what I've realized after building a business, this Airbnb arbitrage business, and some other stuff, is if I had to go back and do it all over again, I guess, so to speak, I would really focus on something that has huge value add and huge opportunity for upside relative to the time and capital invested and overhead responsibility. So that's why we're talking about some of these higher price point stuffs. It just seems to make more sense to go after things that have huge, like 6-figure, potential in them, or at least tens of thousands, per deal, whatever it may be, but the higher, the better. Even versus like, to be honest, my Airbnb business, I mean, it was great because it brought me, like low 6-figure cash flow for a while I was, transitioning. I was investing that passively, quit my job, hire people and all that. So it got me through a great period. I think it was an important business for me. But again, like for how much money and time and overhead and stuff was invested in it, I think I should have just focused on buying. I was talking to Alex about this, like these houses that's, the lots sell for like a $4 million. I know someone who wholesaled the deal for about $1 million profit. So it's like how many little deals, or like how many nights have to be rented in my Airbnb to generate $1 million in profit? And I'll tell you what, even with 20 units in a pretty significant operation, it was going to take 7-8 years to generate that kind of profit. Whereas I know someone who has no employees, barely any overhead, and did that on one deal without even buying the place and investing the capital. So if you look at the time, the overhead, and the capital invested relative to the profit opportunity, I think you can start to parse stuff out pretty quickly. I love this. I think I saw it on Facebook or something, but some owner of a business pulls up in his Lamborghini, and his employee is like, "Oh man, that car's so kick ass! Like, how do I get one?" Or, like, what is your advice to me? And the boss says, "You keep working hard every day, show up on time, do your best, and I'll buy another one next year." So it's just like, I mean, if you look at the upside opportunity of a potential, income stream or whatever, what is the job, the W-2? Are you just buying, are you just working hard so your boss can buy another Lamborghini next year? Or do you have significant upside or equity portion of that? Or, you just get your 3%, 5% annual bump like I was getting back in the state of California. And hopefully by the time I turn, 65, inflation hopefully wouldn't have eaten away my pension that I was promised, if it still exists then, right? So I think just focusing on super high value stuff, whatever it may be, usually it's just a higher price point, which exists everywhere. And that could be, high-end luxury home. It could just be a crappy home in a nice neighborhood. It could be a commercial building. It could be multifamily. It could be whatever. But generally, higher price points are going to have more potential profit opportunity in there. Someone was asking what's high-value places. Yeah, I'm just talking about anywhere, whatever the top 10% of price points are in the area.
And we talk about that too, Jay Martin. Like Alex, we invest in deals that have that high upside potential. That's why the calculator that Alex has that's available on the Facebook group has the worst case, the base case, and the best case. So we typically pass on deals that have the return that's the base if it doesn't also have that upside, because we're not in it to just make a base hit. We want to be able to know that we have the base hit, but also know, hey, if we play our cards right, that high value location, because we're buying on the side of Torrance, we're playing off of Hermosa Beach. Because we're buying in the valley, we're playing off of, the higher end areas in the valley. And so that's what we mean by high value places. And, guys, I know we kind of talked a little bit about our lifestyle design. Tell us a little bit more about, financial freedom. So what passive investments are you currently doing, Jay? Like, what are you doing in terms of building your passive portfolio?
Yeah, so this is not investment advice. And I think everyone needs to do their own research, all that stuff. And if I really find stuff that's good for you, because some of these syndications I invest in, they don't have a lot of cash flow up front, but when they sell it, they make a ton of money and send it back. That's fine for me because I got stuff rolling in and out, whatever. So to be straightforward, yeah. So I'm currently invested with Open Door Capital, which is Brandon Turner and Ryan Murdoch, like we were talking about, a bunch of those folks. Praxis Capital, Brian Burke. Who else? Open Door and Whitehaven. Ben Libovich and Sam Grooms have done a really great job actually in Phoenix. They've had a couple exits. I've invested in 4 deals with them over the last couple of years. Maybe the 5th one I'm wiring some money now. I'm looking at maybe lending Alex some money because he's doing some deals. Funny, we were just walking down the street talking. He's like, "Oh yeah, I'm always borrowing money, to buy stuff and this and that." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm getting wired tomorrow." So, I kind of have a pretty thorough process for analyzing, sponsors, whoever's leading the deal. Kind of look at them. It's usually people I've known, for years or whatever. And I like what they're doing and how ambitious they are. And so I kind of have limits on how much I invest with each person and geography and stuff like that. But that's sort of my approach to, to the process and who I'm investing with right now in specific names. I think I actually have a Facebook group that's just for investors. So for people raising money, you can't be on there. So we can talk crap behind people's backs. But if you're interested, you can hit me up on Facebook, and there's a group where we talk about all these deals and analyze and stuff like that.
And guys, again, I think, it's a great way that he put it right there. It's, find what works for you, right? And so what works for Jay Martin is these certain types of syndications. What works for Alex right now at this stage of his career is flipping. And so having that idea, we always harp on it. It's the roles and goals is, know what your goal is. And, Jay Martin, I think you have a really good idea of what your goal is. And, Alex and Jay, I'll pose a question to you guys. What is that number that you're shooting for? Like, what does that goal look like for Alex? And what does that goal look like for Jay Martin?
Do you want the low number first or the high? Who's going first?
Go ahead, Jay.
Well, to be honest, I didn't maybe plan it as much as I should have, but it was kind of interesting. Like right when the coronavirus hit, all my Airbnb income went way down, and my immediate reaction was like, okay, I'm starting a new business. So I was going to, try to find some of these really, really high price point deals, like in the, few $1 million, to get an opportunity to wholesale. And then as I was looking a little bit more at the returns I'm getting on some of these passive investments, I'm like, wait, what if I just sold all my stuff and invested passively? So I'll tell you the exact number. I mean, it's going to be about 750 or 800,000 net worth after taxes. So under $1 million, which you won't hear from most real estate investors. And I plan to earn an average about around 15%, 15, 16% with some in cash and, you know, some in these deals, most of it in these deals. So it's about 100 grand more or less net on about 800,000 ish in net worth. Which honestly, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say a number that low, let alone actually do it that low, unless they just retired and didn't have the money. But you know, for me, I live a pretty simple lifestyle. I don't have any children. You know, 6 figures post tax. I'm living mostly in other countries where it's way, way, way cheaper. And my backup plan, there's multiple backup plans, but I'm like, you know, worst case, I can always go back and do a deal or something, especially if the market sucks and my portfolio drops. It's probably because there's deals out there. You know, anytime something's bad. And I'm like, really worst case scenario, I've lived in other countries. Like I can live in another country for probably $1,000 a month, perfectly happily, with less flights back. Obviously, I hope to never be there, but I think everyone gets so scared of, oh man, like giving up control of my money. You know, they can't imagine it. And like me and Alex, actually, I want you to talk a little bit about your net worth and your cash flow goals, because I think it's this important thing again to work backwards. Like, oh, how much do I need? I know that I can live pretty comfortably on like 5,000-6,000 a month, the way I live, especially in other countries. So if I'm bringing in 9 or 10 per month after tax, that gives me flexibility to spend a lot more. Again, but I don't, you know, I'm not like staying in the Ritz-Carlton every night. Like I like staying in local kind of places. And my, you know, my monthly overhead for lodging is usually $1,500 a month. It's like another 500, maybe 1,000 for flights, depending on where I'm doing. And then, you know, a bunch of food and Uber and parties, whatever else. So yeah, that's net about 750, 800,000 net worth and about 100,000 a year post tax with about a 16-ish% IRR target.
Couple of things I loved there before, Alex, you give your numbers. You know, I like how, you know, you mentioned you have multiple plans. You have backup plans and backup plans, which is huge. You know, some people just have plan A. Don't let plan B and C distract you from plan A, but have that fallback plan so that you're still able, you know, to say, hey, if I do need to, I can go live in a different country and shave a little bit off of those expenses. And I think that's huge.
One thing I wanted to add is most people never do plan A because they don't have a plan B or C. They're too scared to do it in the first place, and then they just sit on their ass the rest of the time, you know, doing just in momentum mode, whatever they were doing before kind of thing. So yep. I think, you know, having a little bit of fallback plan allows you to take that leap sometimes, I think.
And I love how part of your fallback plan was, look, if I need to get back in, I can dive back in. I can use these skills that I've already acquired. I did it once right now. I've already done it. I already did a flip as a felon. I could do a flip as a foreign traveler, right?
Yeah. I mean, I figure I already did it once. I don't know why some people are like, oh, it's like, oh, if I'm not making money, it's like, whatever. Especially, again, if things are bad, I think it means there's opportunity. So it's kind of like in a circumstance where you might most need some more money, it's most likely to be there. I don't know. I think there's plenty around. Alex, yeah. So share with us about what yours. I know your goals are a little bit higher than mine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm ambitious, but you know, you get me to think about more of the lifestyle. But I think there's definitely a balance because I can't just sit around and do nothing like you like to do all day, which is cool. But I think my immediate goal, it really comes down to passive income because I don't have that much of it right now, but it's $20,000 a month, $250,000 a year. I think based on my current projections, we can get there in less than 2 years. That's kind of like the top goal, like get there, 20,000. I think I'll be happy with that. I had an original goal of a net worth of being a decamillionaire, which is $10 million. I always felt like $1 million wasn't enough, but it depends on what kind of life you're trying to live in. And to me, I think those numbers are also reflective of kind of the impact that you're having too. And so to me, it's also about that, like how many people am I influencing, impacting to help transform their lives. So, but yeah, we talked about that a little bit because those are off. If I have $10 million, I'm gonna make it a lot more than $20,000 a month. But I can
that's only, I think we were doing the calculation, it's like 2.5%. I'm like, well, damn, dude, if you got 10 million, you're making a lot more than that 20,000 a month. But
once I get to $20,000, then am I going to want 50, or am I going to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to be like Jay and like, hey, you know what, I just, you know, maybe I want a family at that point. Maybe I want to do other things aside from travel. Maybe I want to be another place in the country. So we shall see. But that's, you know, those are my numbers. And then I think I think by the end of the year, we could be worth somewhere probably close to where Jay's at.
And guys, you know, again, these are just numbers, right? Like Alex said, his change, Jay Martin's has changed. So it's not like these have to be your set in stone numbers. These are just, guide polls so that am I tracking to the right place?
Yeah.
Alex and I talk about this all the time. The most important thing of business is making sure you get back on track, because you're constantly being pulled off track. And if you can just maintain that consistency and get back on track, that's where you're really hitting that goal. So again, I think that this was just incredible stuff that you guys shared. For me personally, I kind of split the difference right in between you guys, and would fall in somewhere around like the 3 to 5 million net worth number would be something I'd be really excited about, and kind of right in there with you guys. Anywhere between and $20,000 would probably keep me pretty comfortable in terms of monthly passive income. So I kind of split the difference right there between you two.
Nice.
Well, that's only, by the way, at 15% return, that's only about $1 million and some change.
Million out, exactly, right?
Which is kind of, it's kind of surprising when you actually do the calculation. It's like, oh well, it might not be as much as you think. All the time.
Exactly.
Hey, so guys, as always, this was just incredible stuff. We're gonna let Jay Martin and Alex kind of continue and finish this up and wrap us up. And in the meantime, we'll go ahead and invite everybody else onto the screen here. But any last kind of closing thoughts from either of you guys on financial independence, creating your own, financial future and kind of freestyle design of your lifestyle?
Man, I would say really write down what you do with your time, like we were talking about. If you had $1 billion or whatever, and get started sooner than later. Take some risk and get out there and do it. I think that's my best piece of advice. Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it just comes down to that same thing, that daily consistent action. I mean, we gave you guys the short version, but I mean, Jay Martin, he went to jail, did all this crazy stuff. And then, I mean, it's really been about 10 years. I mean, kind of climbed back up from, or at least. And I found that, just where are you on that journey? You're in year number 1, or year number 2, year number 5, but also constantly reflecting on, your results and making adjustments, and not just being stuck to one lane or one thing, but having a direction. So I think he covered networking a lot too. And, a lot of what's going on in our business and my life is because of all the contacts in my network and the people that I get to call friends and associates and partners and all that good stuff. So I think that we all continue to help each other grow in whatever areas we want to grow, because everybody has their own, their dream life. And so we just want to create that tribe where everybody can try to design that and give each other, positive feedback or resources or different mindsets. So let us know how we can help. But, Jay Martin's a, cool guy. He's not that easy to get in touch with because of Avi. And I think that's, that's on purpose.
My time is precious.
But he will answer questions, or maybe you just ask me and I'll ask him through, when I'm with him.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna try to be better on Insta. You can hit me. It's real estate nomad, real.estate.nomad, and I'm on Facebook too. I think they're cross-linked. Actually, if I can give a quick plug too, I actually just started writing a book, a sort of autobiography / practical stuff about Airbnb, investing, this and that. It'll be done in 1 year. So if you're interested, hit me up. And I'm also single. So if you were looking for a homeless, unemployed felon traveling the world, feel free to hit me up on Insta too. I saw a couple ladies laughing at that. So I don't know if you're laughing with me or at me, but I'll take it either way.
And guys, again, I think that's just incredible stuff there. And what I would love for you to do, Jay Martin, is if you don't mind joining our Facebook group, and that way people can kind of connect with you there. And if you don't mind, man, just pose that question that we asked today in the Facebook group. And everybody who's in here, we had 40 attendees in the call today. Everybody in here said that this was an absolutely legendary call. I would challenge each of you guys to go onto the Facebook group and respond with what you would do with your time if you had $1 trillion. And then maybe 6 months from now, maybe a year from now, we'll do something cool with the tribe, and we'll kind of connect back and see where everybody is in terms of that goal and what they're doing right now and why they're not doing more of it. So I think that'd be a great way. And you guys can connect with Jay Martin through Facebook when he does that. All right. Yep. Guys, the chat was absolutely live today. Jay and Alex, I know you guys were pretty dialed in, but everybody on the call, can I get a 2 thumbs up if Jay Martin is absolutely legendary or what, man? This was some killer stuff, man.
That intro, man.
The intro and everything.
By the way, everyone, I wrote the bio. Alex wasn't trying to insult me or anything by writing all that stuff. It's all true.
All right,
So I think you might have sold your first 40 copies of the book. We'll get the pre-sale link going and see if we can get those out.
If you come visit me in person outside the country, I'll give you a free book. How about that?
There you go. And again, I think I speak for everybody, Jay Martin and Alex, we appreciate your guys' time. We know you guys are traveling the world and creating the lifestyle that you guys want to live down in Guadalajara. And so we'll let you guys get back to your travels. Enjoy the rest of your day. And as always, guys, we'll catch you on the flip side. All right.
Gracias a todos. Thank you, guys.
Mucho gusto. Hasta luego.
Hasta luego.
Thanks again, everybody, for showing up. We appreciate you guys.
Thanks, everyone, for dropping in. Hope you enjoyed it. Hit me up on Facebook. I'll see you.
Single traveling nomad right over there. There he is. On the screen. You found him here first. Appreciate you guys.